Today's topic is around shifting to stay, shifting to stay. And
Ooh,
sometimes as a coach, I've gotten a lot of, well, I'll say several times, people will want to shift, but most often they're asking questions about shifting to another company, shifting to another industry, shifting to something. They're bored, they're worn out. And what they say to me is, I just need a change. So today, however, I want to talk about a topic that is one that I got recently more than one time. And that question was, I want to shift. I like my company. I like where I'm working. I enjoy the people that I work with. I think that there is a future here. The current job that I'm in, I've been in about 5 years. And I'm bored with the person that I work for. I'm bored with my job, but I like my company. So, how do I shift to a new role? And the additional questions that she asked are, do I include my manager? Because one of the concerns she had is, how will the manager view that? Do I include HR? Is this something that I need to keep as a secret? So, Jen, I'm going to kick it off and then I'm going to ask you if you have any input on the topic, if that works for you. The first thing that I say to people, and I say this to them whenever they're talking about being bored, and that is, do your homework internally. So the good news is that she knows she wants to stay at that company. The other news is that she recognizes that there are some skills that she has built along the way that she can transfer. She, however, does not know where she wants to go and has made the comment about her boss clearly not being someone that she views can be helpful. So the first thing I asked her to do is inventory yourself. Look at your own qualities, look at your skills, fill out your resume. What are those skills that you had when you started that role 5 years ago? What skills have you added and increased? What are those things that you know will keep your interest in a role? Are you more of a creative mindset, but you're working in a role that really requires a lot of data analysis? Are you someone that likes a role where you have continuous new projects? Inventory yourself first. Then I asked her to go out into the open positions within the various departments and see if something grabs her attention in terms of that particular division. The other thing that I assured her was that companies like to know that you want to stay. Companies like to know that you're willing to leverage management in terms of helping you. But I did tell her, I set her expectations that not all management is prepared to do that. And while they love the fact that you want to stay, the first thing they think about is, oh, I got to replace this headcount. So they may or may not be as excited as you, but you don't want to feel like you're hiding this or that you should be uncomfortable, but start with your own. So assess yourself, find out your skills, highlight those strong skills, then start to match those things that you desire with some of the open positions in the organization. Jen, you want to weigh in on this?
so I do want to first acknowledge what Sean said. I wonder if this is more prevalent in millennials. It will be interesting to see how their age group correlates to job satisfaction. And
Ah,
there is something to that, right? And so there are a lot of studies that are talking about how, especially millennials, how staying in a job for a long period of time is just it's not going to be 20 years long anymore, right?
right.
Even with the same job as well too. So there's something to that. However, the context of this person in particular is that they've been in the same role for 5 years. It is very natural to feel like, I want to think about what's next. One of the
Mm-hmm.
places to go wrong that I think about first is that we often wait for someone else to recognize our efforts and other
Right, right. That's true. Yeah.
and I see a lot of people who are really hard workers that are waiting for someone to tap them and say, yes, you did so good in this position that you're going to get the next position. It doesn't really work that way. Sometimes some people get opportunities that way, and that's great. But for most of us, the very first place that I would start is, what do you want? What do you desire? Like, what do you desire next? Because everything should build around that. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of I'm only going to look at what's available to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bigger fan of I want to start first with what is it that I desire, and I want to lead with that. And so if this person, once that person answers that question on what do they desire next, then it's about saying, is it available within this organization?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Whether or not the position is open or posted, is this something that can be available in general? Mm-hmm. And so I often recommend to people as well too that, let's say, for example, it's a project manager. You're like, yeah, even though I work in HR, I realize I'm so good at project management, mm-hmm. right? One aspect of being in HR is project management. Maybe the very next thing that I want to do is be in project management, do something where my role more fully connects to that. And then the next step is which departments within your organization will have something like that available. And if it's not in your organization, then maybe you should start looking externally as well too. I always tell people that it's great. Loyalty to a company is great, especially if they are supporting you. But you don't have to have that as your only option. You can look internally as well as externally. And as a matter of fact, the success that you're going to find externally is going to empower you more internally as you're looking for jobs too. Because when you realize how much they love you, you begin to understand how much value you actually have internally. So.
Yeah, thank you. Were there additional comments from or questions from our participants? I think I might have missed one from M. Jack, but I may have read something about the imposter syndrome. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Sean said self-advocacy can be hard if you're dealing with imposter syndrome too.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting perspective and probably true. To be honest with you. But picking up on where you were going with this, Jen, one of the things I think that when people begin to ask questions about their own career and start to question where they're going, it's difficult for people to truly take the time and focus on what is it that you want? What do you really want? And what will bring you happiness? What they can tell you is, I'm bored. Okay, when you say you're bored, what does that mean? You're bored because you get the same assignments every week. You're bored because it's too easy. And I really push the needle to say, let's define what your bored means, because in your next role, you could be bored as well if you don't know what keeps you going. The other thing that I encourage is, and I do have to agree with you that whether it's internal or external, find your center, find what it is that you're looking for, find what you believe is missing in this role. And I think this concept of my manager or the person that I work for, it should be that inspiration for me. And now this inspiration is not there. So I hate my job, I hate my manager, and I want a new role. We have to be really careful because those things that are intrinsic or should be are things that you have to identify in terms of that. Any input from our audience member? Anybody that wants to say anything here?
And while we're waiting for that too, just two thoughts here. I do want to go back to what Sean said a second ago, because it's a very powerful statement, because we run across a lot of people who, especially people who come to us for career coaching, who are dealing with imposter syndrome. And so it's this idea of, am I enough? Kind of go back to this, like, am I enough to have that thing, that job, that promotion, to be here where I am today, and even to go to where I want to go next. So there's a lot of it too from representation. And I talk to employers about this quite often, that when you don't see a lot of people who identify similarly to you in certain positions, it can begin making you think, well, am I enough to do that? No, nobody else that identifies similarly to me has been doing as well. But another part too that we try to focus on, especially in interviews, is this idea of value. The more that we can really identify and acknowledge the value that we have and the value that we bring to any role, the more it begins to overshadow the feeling of imposter syndrome. Now, I'm not saying that there's a cure at all for imposter syndrome, because as we continue to reach new levels and new heights, this whole fish out of water feeling happens again, and there's a level of imposter syndrome. But if you always lead first with identifying the value that you have and that you can bring to any role, it can really help to overshadow it. So I just want to speak to that first. You made a statement as well too, Loretta, about figuring out what you desire. One of the things that I found a lot within the career coaching space is that as humans, it's very easy for us to know what we don't want, what we don't desire, what's not working, what's broken. If somebody came and asked even that one person, what's not working? Oh, this isn't working. I don't like this. And I don't, or what do you not desire? I know I don't want to work in X, Y, and Z. I know I don't want to do this. But oftentimes for many people, when they come to coaching, it is the first time that someone is helping them to shift that conversation forward and say, okay, we're very clear on what you don't want and what you don't desire. What do you desire? And for many people, it is the first time that they've ever even sat and thought about, well, damn, what do I actually want? Because we're so focused on, taking care of everything external to us, which is, fine. But now we really get to focus on ourselves. And so I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's really good. That's extremely good. The other thing, do we see any more, just like making sure that I don't see someone that wants to make a comment here. The other thing about not being able to determine what it is that you want, I do want to put a plug here for the Inner Circle, which is a community of people that are at the Jennifer Tardy Consulting Group, where people pay a small membership fee to do exactly what Jen and I are doing today. It's a larger group. It is in the format of very, very much privacy is there. They come to the table. We talk about a lot of things, and the cost is minuscule. I mean, a really tiny percentage of what each of those people would have to pay if they had personal coaching. I think what happens is, depending on the coaching experience that people have, there is some trepidation about coaching in general. The difference in Inner Circle is you have so many different walks of life at the table. People join the conversation with or without their faces shown, with or without their camera on, and some have pseudonames that they come around the table with. But at the end of the day, most often topics are raised and the conversation goes into an area that touches someone else. And there you go. You've got an opportunity to share, this is something that really hits home to me. And this is something that I've been struggling with. And as the Inner Circle group begins to talk about it, we do have our moderation as coaches. At the end of the day, I think that I think the unique thing about Inner Circle that I love is that people have the opportunity to share and to receive, and they don't have to share to receive. They can just be there. They can just be a listening ear, and they can be supportive. So I am going to make sure that the Inner Circle, you'll see that within jennifertardy.com, but I want to make sure that you go in there, take a look at everything that's offered there. We also have testimonies of people who have gone through the course, and they offer their own perspective. Jen, did you have anything?
Yeah, let me just say this too, and then I want to touch on Sean. You asked some of the best questions. This is why I so appreciate you. Um, so I do want to say something. These types of conversations, a lot of people think that when you're talking about career coaching, it's a lot of, hey, what sort of questions do I ask during your interview? How do I answer these questions during interview? In our live group coaching, we have real life conversations about things like imposter syndrome, about things like what does it feel like to be the only person in a crowd and that identifies similarly to you and all of this. I mean, we have conversations that sometimes brings people to tears. We talk about affirmations. I'm willing to see what's on the other side of this. And the reason why we go that far is because it's not work and life. It's all life. Your work happens to be a huge component of it. And so we have to talk a lot about life so that people are able to show up better in the career space. And that is a big deal. And that's why I love when our conversations in the live group coaching go off on tangents about real life. I mean, think about we had one person in the group who was even talking about how he's very excited on his job, but it's impacting his home. It's like, what do you do when your partner doesn't want to be in that same location, but you really love your job? I mean, real life things. Okay. So Sean, your question, which is
I see Sean. Yeah, Sean's really hitting them in there. Thank you, Sean.
Which is a great question, is what are some best practices to quantify your value? So I am not a big fan of when people say, well, what do people compliment you on? That's fine. That's like think about what people compliment you on and then think about that as your value. I want to go levels deeper than that. What do people depend on you for? Think about that. And it doesn't matter what role you go into, what company you work at. It's the same types of things that people really depend on you for.
True.
They know that you do it well, and they know that you're going to come through every single time. That is your value. And so, for instance, for me, one of the things, and understanding your value also connects to your elevator pitch, right? And so a lot of people, when they're thinking about their elevator pitch, they're like, well, this is, I'm party, and this is my job, what I do in that job title. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But let's take your elevator pitch one level further. What do people depend on you for that you happen to deliver through that job title? Now, that's a hell of an elevator pitch. And so, as an example, one of the things that I used to share with people all the time is that companies hire me to turn around underperforming teams. That is the value that I bring to every single company that I go into, regardless of the position. But what I can tell you is that I can't do that type of value being an individual contributor. I need to be in a leadership position in order to be positioned well to turn around underperforming teams.
Right.
It doesn't matter where I go, people are depending on me to do that work. And so when people are thinking about their own value, think about it more than just what do people compliment you on? No. What do people depend on you for?
Yeah, that's really good. So with the 2 minutes that we have left, I know we lost a little bit of time with the technical issues in the beginning. Thank you, Sean. I know you've got to run. Thank you for the feedback on the session. We appreciate you. What I want to say is we want to really respect your time and respect what we've asked of you to join us today. So we have 2 minutes left, and I would like to say that I want to redirect you again to the jennifertardy.com. I want to also add one other element of the services that are provided. Jen Tardy Consulting works both on the employee side and the employer side, because we actually have companies that recommend the coaching and the services that we provide for their employees. In addition to that, there's several layers that leadership may need with respect to the services that are provided. So at 12:14 p.m., I will say very quickly, our highlights for today include making sure that someone, if you're managing that person or if it's you, that they do that internal inventory and that they really make sense of the question, the answer to what's, why am I bored? The big nugget for today is, what do people depend on you for? If they call your name and they say Bob Jones, or you can depend on him to do this, that, and the other. So I hope the session has been great for you. And at 12:15, we're going to go ahead and honor our time. And we're going to say thanks for joining. We hope that you'll be here for our next session.
Bye.